Hey folks, buckle up for a wild ride down under. Picture this. Australia, that colossal continent that's basically a country-sized adventure park, is dotted with powerhouse cities like Sydney's harbour glamour, Melbourne's coffee obsession, Brisbane's sunny vibes, Adelaide's wine wonders, Perth's beachy bliss, and even Hobart's quirky charm. But swing your gaze to the northern coastline. Crickets, or should I say, crocodiles. It's eerily empty of any mega metropolis, especially weird since it's practically high-fiving Asia's busiest shipping routes. So, what's the deal? Why no northern boomtown? And hold your horses. If you're thinking Darwin, it's cute, but with under 150,000 folks, it's more like a plucky outpost than a skyscraper showdown. Stick with me. We're about to unpack this Aussie enigma with some surprising twists. Welcome back. As we keep exploring Australia's northern coastal conundrum, why it's more ghost town than glittering metropolis. This vast continent is a bundle of paradoxes, isn't it? Enormous in size, yet mostly uninhabited, encircled by vast seas, but with a parched heartland that's drier than a forgotten sponge. It boasts some of the planet's most desirable urban spots, while whole swaths sit eerily vacant, like nature's way of saying, keep out, humans. Grasping Australia's rugged terrain sheds light on why folks down under have clustered where they have, and why that northern shoreline sees so few residents. It's not exactly rolling out the welcome mat. Consider this. Australia holds the title for Earth's flattest landmass, skipping the drama of lofty peaks or fiery volcanoes altogether. A big chunk of its core belongs to the Australian Shield, an ancient, rock-solid slab that's been worn down over eons, hundreds of millions of years, without so much as a mountain makeover, leaving behind wide-open flats, gentle dips, and rounded knolls that wouldn't impress a thrill seeker. Right in the middle sprawls the outback, that expansive zone of sandy wastes and thorny bushes that probably pops into your head when you think Aussie wilderness, complete with its no-frills survival charm. Yet, around this tough interior, the edges offer a bit more variety, with steadier showers and soils that are at least somewhat forgiving, like a reluctant host finally offering a snack. Take the Great Dividing Range. It snakes alongside the eastern seaboard from Queensland south to Victoria, snagging humidity from sea breezes to form a lush strip amid the aridity, almost as if it's hoarding all the green for itself. Key waterways such as the Murray and Darling meander through here, though their flows are as unreliable as a flaky friend. Now, shift north, and you're in a whole other world compared to the central dryness or southern fertility. This area sits squarely in the tropics, featuring a savanna setup in the west and center, flipping to monsoon vibes in the northeast. Forget the steady rhythms of the south. Up here, it's all about wild swings, scorching temps paired with deluges in the wet months, then endless arid spells the rest of the time, like a faucet that's either off or flooding the bathroom. When those monsoons hit, they don't mess around, swelling streams and transforming arid fields into soggy marshes in a flash. Come dry season, though, it's back to scarcity, with those wetlands evaporating faster than plans for a rainy day. The northern landscape doesn't make things easier, either mostly level ground dotted with rough grasses and sparse trees, but the dirt's been stripped of nutrients by ages of steamy downpours, leaving it about as fertile as a worn-out welcome mat. Add in mangrove-fringed river mouths, expansive flood zones, and steep escarpments for extra twists, turning the place into a natural obstacle course. And let's not forget cyclones, those rowdy visitors that routinely pummel the Northern Territory and Northern Queensland shores with fierce gusts and torrents, nature's not-so-subtle reminder to rethink beachfront property. That said, Northern Australia is anything but barren. It's a hotspot for astonishing variety in life, hosting some of the globe's few remaining vast, pristine tropical habitats. Think of it as Earth's hidden gem, if gems came with warning labels. Naturally, this vibrancy includes critters and flora that pack a punch, some of the riskiest around for us two-legged types. Exhibit A, the stinging tree, infamous for delivering agony that lingers for months, earning whispers as potentially the most toxic plant out there by certain standards. Ouch! Talk about a plant with a grudge. Australia's terrain is nothing if not intense, earning its rep for peril, much like neighbors Indonesia and Southeast Asia. So, why did those initial British outposts steer clear of this Asia-linked frontier? Well, it circles back to Australia's original stewards, the Aboriginal peoples. Stay tuned, we'll dive deeper next. What's your favorite Aussie contradiction? Let me know below. Welcome back to our journey through Australia's quirky urban layout, where the north stays stubbornly sparse despite its prime location. Way before any British ships dropped anchor, Aboriginal Australians had been mastering the continent's wild mix of terrains for tens of thousands of years, turning what could be a tough gig into a finely tuned lifestyle. Instead of stacking up permanent towns, they thrived in compact, nomadic groups that shifted camps based on the calendar's whims and where the next meal or drink might hide practical right, like nature's original road trippers. Of course, these ways of life shifted depending on the spot. In the bountiful southeast, or beside steady river flows, groups could kick back in semi-fixed spots for extended stretches, enjoying the relative ease. The dusty heartland, though, that demanded non-stop wandering and a PhD-level grasp of the environment just to stay ahead of the curve, survival as an art form. Up in the steamy north, folks synced their routines to the dramatic wet and dry cycles, tweaking what they ate and where they bunked to match the mood swings of the monsoon, almost like dancing with the weather instead of fighting it. Importantly, Aboriginal ways weren't about erecting lasting buildings, which later became the British hallmark of progress. Their approach was all about a profound bond with the earth, woven through dreamtime tales, regular relocations, and careful caretaking habits, treating the landscape like a wise old friend to learn from, not a foe to bulldoze. This subtle style meant scant visible signs that incoming Europeans would label as proper society, even though these cultures were richly layered with their own sophistication. Kind of ironic how the advanced folks missed the memo on that. Then, in 1788, the British stormed in with a radically opposite mindset on territory, building, and growth. They were on the hunt for safe ports, cultivable fields, reliable water sources, and mild weather, preferably bundled together like a colonial combo meal. Sydney's spot on the southeast shore ticked off plenty. A protected bay for docking, weather that didn't throw tantrums, handy woodlands for building materials, and ample room for crops jackpot. Down south, Melbourne scored with rich soil by the Yarra River and a chillier vibe that felt more like home to those UK transplants. Over on the southwest coast, Perth got its start, while Adelaide settled in along the south-central beaches, both following that same comfy blueprint. These hubs quickly drew crowds eager for fresh starts, voluntary or not so much. Case in point, the inaugural fleet hauled in 788 convicts, sparking that famous, if a tad exaggerated, tale of Australia kicking off as a giant jail cell down under. Early outposts hinged on smart planning, positioning where cargo vessels could pull up without drama. Farming could ramp up to full throttle. And the European blueprint for civilization could roll out smoothly, without too much fuss. Being Britain's farthest flung holding, it had to stand on its own feet more than even the budding North American spots ever did talk about being thrown in the deep end. Sure, those pioneering Brits eyed the North too, but let's just say it wasn't love at first sight. Initial stabs at places like Port Essington and Raffles Bay along the top coast fizzled out fast, thanks to being cut off from everything, rampant illnesses, and conditions that were harsher than a bad blind date. Darwin eventually stuck around from 1869, but it stayed modest, tied more to defense duties and its handy spot near Asia than booming business or crowds. Queensland, hugging the northeast shore, fared better with spots like Brisbane and later Cairns and Townsville catching on, but even those hug the state's milder southeast edge or snuggle into safer coastal nooks. The real far north? It mostly stayed a wide open blank slate. In the end, British footholds took the easy road, echoing the land's built-in biases from geography. Today's iconic cities weren't plopped down by chance. They sprouted from spots that meshed well with the environment and suited colonial shortcuts, like picking the low-hanging fruit instead of climbing the thorny tree. Why risk sweltering temps, mosquito-borne woes like malaria, deluges, and loneliness when cozier, boat-friendly, and fruitful alternatives beckoned? Fast forward to now, and those old headaches are mostly fixed with modern fixes. So why hasn't a northern powerhouse city popped up yet? We'll crack that next. Stay curious. What's one thing you'd pack for a northern Aussie adventure? Share below. Australia sure packs a punch in size, but it's no crowd pleaser when it comes to headcount, clocking in at around 28 million residents as of 2026, landing it in the 54th spot globally for population. Yet, with all that elbow room, its density dips to a mere 3.5 folks per square kilometer, making even Canada's 4.5 seem downright sociable by comparison. Talk about spreading thin. This means Aussies huddle together more than most nations, leaving huge chunks of the land as quiet as a library during finals week. You'd figure the northern coastline might buck the trend with at least one hefty urban spot, right? Peek at a map, and it's obvious. This top end cozies up closer to Southeast Asia than to southern stars like Sydney or Melbourne. Heck, Darwin's nearer to Jakarta and Singapore than to Canberra, the nation's capital, like being invited to the neighborhood barbecue but showing up at the wrong block. In a world where cargo ships rule the waves through the Java and South China Seas, docking at powerhouses like Singapore, Hong Kong, and Shanghai, northern Australia looks primed as Asia's southern doorman for trade flows. But nope, it's still mostly a sparse scene of tiny hamlets and lonely stations, almost like the continent's shy relative avoiding the spotlight. Why the holdout? Well, it's not for lack of brainstorming. Politicians, defense strategists, and business minds have tossed around ideas for decades to pump up the north or even plant a fresh capital up there. Yet, nothing's ballooned to match the southern giants. Kind of ironic, given all the hot air spent on plans that fizzled. Blame starts with good old geography, Australia's eternal plot twist. The tropical north throws curveballs with its weather. Monsoonal downpours, sticky humidity, and cyclones. During the wet spell that turned roads into rivers and infrastructure into a soggy mess, faster than you can say umbrella shortage. Then flips to the dry phase, dishing out dust storms, bushfire threats, and water woes for endless months like a moody chef who can't decide between soup or salad. Small crews or mining ops can hack it, but scaling up to city life? That demands rock-solid setups, smooth supply chains, and constant water and power stuff the North doles out about as generously as a stingy tipper. Even in 2025, isolation bites hard. It's not just miles from other Aussie hubs, but a world away from the country's main grids, skimpy highways, spotty rails, and a utility network thinner than a budget airline's legroom. Whipping up city-level support systems here? That's a wallet-busting endeavor. And for what payoff? The crowd's too sparse to spark demand. No demand means no profit pitch. And without that, politicians shrug and move on like chasing a mirage that vanishes when you get close. Then there's Mother Nature's delicate side. The North's packed with fragile wetlands, mangrove mazes, and one-of-a-kind critters. Plus, it's the long-standing turf of Aboriginal cultures, especially in Arnhem Land and the Kimberley, where spiritual ties run deeper than ancient roots. Plunking down mega developments could upend these spots, and sideline communities already juggling tough odds. Talk about adding insult to injury. Legally, it's a minefield too. Loads of territory falls under Aboriginal land rights or claims, turning any big build into a drawn-out debate fest. Sure, proximity to Asia shines strategically. Darwin's beefed up as a defense hotspot, basing Aussie troops and US. Marine rotations. With its port famously handed to a Chinese firm in 2015 on a 99-year lease, stirring up Indo-Pacific drama like a geopolitical soap opera. But military muscle doesn't magically multiply residents. Think Fairbanks, Alaska, a key US outpost that stayed modestly sized, proving you can be crucial without turning into a sprawl. Economically, the North's loaded with ores, beef herds, and gas reserves, fueling extraction booms for years. But these gigs don't scream build a metropolis. Mining spots pop up and poof with market swings. Crews jet in for stints and bail. Cash flows in spurts like unpredictable fireworks. It's more tent city vibes than sustainable skyline, unlike the steady hum of Melbourne or Sydney. Ultimately, the South holds the reins, housing about 98% of Aussies in its milder climes, prime harbors, river networks, and built-up bases, making it the undisputed core, as if geography whispered, "Stay here," and everyone listened. Those early picks for Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth weren't flukes. They synced with the land's perks, weather winds, and links, keeping the North on the sidelines with just 2% of the population and zero big leagues. Darwin, the North's top dog, clocks in at 140,000 souls, while the whole region scrapes under 600,000, like the understudy that never gets the lead role. Geography sketched the blueprint for Australia's first footholds. History locked it in, and even with today's global shifts, that momentum keeps cities glued south, far from northern waves. Some might blame the tropics for the snub, but hey, steamy spots often boom Britain, even spun Singapore into a thriving hub from its colonial days. Hope this peek into Australia's top-end tales sparked some thoughts. Catch you in the next one. Cheers.